Greetings, my dears. This is Annette. My website is AnnetteLeonard.com, and I am back again with an episode of Chronic Wellness. We are continuing to talk about menopause, and I just want to say here at the top, I am not a medical doctor. I am not a physician. Do not take medical advice from me. So if you have interest in the things that I'm talking about, be sure to run them by with your healthcare provider. So any one of us who is a biological female who makes it past a certain age in life will hit menopause. And if you have not taken the time to educate yourself about menopause and its effects, they're coming for you, number one. But number two, it is worth taking the time to learn some things about. And luckily, we live in a time where there is some information, where there are finally some studies, there is some research, there is a great push of people who are learning more and wanting to teach you about what goes on when egg production stops and your body stops menstruating. And boy, is it a lot more than just that. Menopause affects every system in our body, and it can change things from our muscle mass to our bone density, from our cognition to our skin. And the effects don't just start when you stop menstruating. They can start years before. And what's difficult is finding providers who are trained in thinking with you about how menopause is impacting your body. Because since the studies and the growing body of work and the growing push toward learning more about menopause is pretty recent, your provider probably had less than an hour of education about menopause, if you're lucky. And so it does mean that we, the patients, might be walking into a room with more menopause education than our physician. And that is an unfortunate reality. And for me, I don't have a uterus, and I do have ovaries. So the onset of menopause is a little difficult to figure out because I don't have a period to tell me, hey, this is it. You're hitting it now. So I am having to be guided by my symptoms to know what's happening in my body. And if it is tricky to find somebody who knows anything about menopause, it is even more difficult to find someone who knows about menopause and complex overlapping diseases. So, for those of us with overlapping conditions, a few things. I have been taking prednisone for more than a decade now. That's sobering to say. Currently, I am on a very small dose of prednisone, but there have been times in the last decade when I have been on a very large dose. And prednisone is known to just eat away at bones and muscles. Now, your bones are something that rebuild themselves constantly. I don't know if you know this. I think it's freaking fascinating. But bones are consistently chewing themselves up and remaking themselves. So every 7 years, the bones that you have now were not the bones you had 7 years ago. They are completely remodeled, which is just stunning. I mean, what a system we have. And when you are on meds like prednisone, the bones that you are remaking are less dense, less tightly structured than the bones that you used to have. And you have probably heard the word osteoporosis. Maybe you've even heard the word osteopenia. Those are conditions that often happen for women as their bones become less dense. Osteopenia becoming less dense, osteoporosis dangerously undense, and prednisone leads to that, as does menopause, losing estrogen. And so if you are already in a situation like being on prednisone, and then you hit menopause, you really should be paying attention to your bone density. If you and your doctors have not already clocked that, bring that to their attention. And then there are things like muscle loss. And if you're in a situation like me where you have post-exertional malaise, and for me, I had a muscle wasting condition, building muscle with lung disease and these coexisting conditions is real tricky. And yet, I want as good a quality of life as I can have. And so I mean to pay attention to these things. And for me, a lot of that comes down to quality of nutrition. What am I putting in my body to build what muscles and bones I am building? And honestly, I would love to be reaching for the Oreos and the cheese because those sound good, but those aren't what build quality muscle and bone. And they aren't the things that are easiest to make, right? The foods that are the highest quality take some time to prepare, which in our circumstances is often more difficult, right? Convenience foods are just that, they are convenient. So these are a few of the considerations of the many around menopause. And I'll get to a few more in my next video, but I wonder what's on your radar. I wonder what you've experienced symptom-wise around menopause, or whether you are talking with your doctors about your conditions and menopause, or if you're taking hormone replacement therapy, or if you're not, and why you're not. And there are some really great docs out there. I follow Mary Claire Haver, whose whole thing is called The Pause. You can find her everywhere. But there are lots of other good doctors out there and good sources of information. And if you have some to share, please share them in the comments, and find me on social to tell me what's on your mind about menopause. So we'll talk about this for at least another week. Thanks for your time and attention. As ever, I'm grateful to share a few minutes with you. And until we're together again, be well.